His name is Nick Waugh-Bacchus. He wanted to stand up for a while. He loves the Red Nose charity, and he's written a book, and he's probably trying to push that tonight, I would imagine. So, I don't know. We get to hear about that. His name is Nick Waugh-Bacchus. Please make him feel welcome. Start the clapping. Lots of love. Please welcome Mr. Nick Waugh-Bacchus.
Hello. 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 Drinking on a school night. I'm not actually going to drink at all tonight because tomorrow, and this is true, I'm going into hospital because I'm going to have some kidney stones removed. Oh, thank you. So I thought, what more appropriate than tonight to tell you a little bit about what happened when I first had some kidney stones removed a few years ago. Because when you first have issues down there, what they try and do, they're very, very cautious. They want to make sure it's nothing more sinister. So I had what's called a cystoscopy, which is really hard to say. If you're drunk, don't do it, you'll drown in your own spit. But with a cystoscopy, what happens is that a camera is inserted down into your bladder so that your doctor or anyone else who's passing by can have a bit of a nosy round. But the thing is, there's only one access point into your bladder. Don't worry. I said to the doctor, please, is there any other way? Can you maybe unscrew my belly button? Put a camera down there? And they said, no, don't be stupid. Everyone knows if you unscrew your belly button that your bottom falls off. And if you've eaten quite recently, it could be very messy. But it was okay because my consultant, he was very reassuring. And he said, and I quote, don't worry, you might feel some mild discomfort, but it won't really be painful. He's a bad man. He tells lies. On the day of the actual operation, I was lying on the operating table, and at one end, by my head, was a nurse. I did not know for why. At the other end, there was my consultant, and in one hand, he had the hugest syringe you've ever seen. It was massive. It was full of local anaesthetic. Huge. In his other hand, he was holding something not quite so huge. Honestly. Tiny. I think it had an impending sense of doom. I was trying to crawl back up into my body. And it was at this point that he started to renege on his previous reassurances, because he looked at me and he said, this might sting a little. I wanted to say, what do you mean this might sting a little? But I couldn't, because my face was doing this. I looked like some kind of inflatable friend. And it was at this point that the nurse came into play, because she put her hand on my shoulder and very reassuringly she said, don't worry, that's the worst of it over. It'll be okay now. She's a bad lady. She tells lies. Because whilst I am not a doctor, and I'm not a doctor, and any doctor's outfits I have at home are purely for my own use, but I'm pretty sure when you apply a local anaesthetic, you're meant to wait a little while for it to take effect, yeah? Not my consultant. He thought we had magic anaesthetic. As soon as he put it in there, he looked at me and said, right, I'm going to put the camera in now. It's quite a long one. La 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 la. Oh, it's got a tripod. La 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 la. And a cameraman jumping. I responded to this by sitting bolt upright and shouting the Lord's name at the top of my voice. And it was at this point that the nurse came into play once again, and she started to lower me down. I was like this again. I couldn't say anything, but inside I was screaming. Make this stop! Give me some pain relief. Give me morphine. Shoot me you have to. Actually, no. Don't shoot me, shoot him. Shoot the man at the end of the table. The man thrashing around in my bladder with a thorn bush. She didn't do any of that. Instead, she looked at me and she said 3 little words that I will never ever forget. She said, wiggle your toes. What? Wiggle my... Are you having a laugh? Or as I believe the popular phrase is, drop me out. Couldn't believe it. Wiggle your toes. Seriously, is that the best that the medical modern science has to offer? And this wasn't NHS. This was private healthcare. I just got charged for that advice. It's ridiculous. Since when has wiggling your toes been a prescribed painkiller? I've been at the birth of all three of my children. That wasn't on the agenda. At no point did we turn up and the doctor say, well, we've got several options for you in varying degrees of pain, so we can start off with some gas and air. If it gets a little bit worse, maybe some pethidine. If it gets really bad, well, there's always an epidural. Or, they're not going to tell you to wiggle your toes, are they? Because they're sensitive to what's going on and they're not stupid. It's a birth. Of course, the same can't be said for expectant fathers, because we are that stupid. We would go there. And ladies, what would you do if your husbands, when you were trying to give birth, actually went down the wiggle your toes route? Your waters have broken, you've gone into hospital, 3 days later, you still haven't had the baby, you've been awake for every single one of those 72 hours. Your husband hasn't. No, they've sent him home twice because he can't be any help with if he's exhausted. And yet when he gets back there, he's still going to yawn. And you're doing the best that you can. You're exhausted. 72 hours. You've been contracting all the time. But you're trying to do the right thing. So when the nurse says, breathe, breathe, you're trying to breathe, breathe. And when your husband says, breathe, breathe, you're trying not to thump him in the face. And when he's asked you to hold his hand, yes, you'll hold his hand, but not because you want the comfort, because you just want to give him as much pain as you can. You're going to squeeze that hand, you're going to squeeze the life of it, to the extent that when he eventually sees his baby, he ain't going to be able to pick it up because he's got arthritis. So what would you do to him at this point when you can take no more? You feel you're going to deliver a 1-ton baby and you've looked down there ain't room. Even if you had detachable legs, it ain't going to happen. What would you do at that moment if your husband turned to you and said, darling, let's try something different? Ouch, you really hurt my hand. What would you do if he looked at you in the eyes and then he looked at your feet? And in the back of your eyes, what would you do if he told you to wiggle your toes? I suspect two things. Firstly, whatever you do to him, it will seriously restrict the chances of him ever fathering children again. And secondly, when you do it, he'll look like this. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.